A hush fell over the Kadipo Valley. It was the kind of midday silence that feels less like peace and more like a hell breath. The sun, a brutal sovereign in a cloudless sky, beat down on the savannah, turning the air into a shimmering mirage. But here, beneath the canopy of a sprawling acacia, a different kind of stillness reigned. The lion, a formidable male, lay vigilant, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. Every muscle was poised, a testament to his kingship over this land. Beside him, the lioness was a picture of weary contentment, her flank rising and falling with the deep, even breaths of post-hunt exhaustion. The green grass, a rare luxury in this unforgiving landscape, seemed to cushion their sleep, swaying gently in a breeze that carried whispers of both life and death. This was the wild in its purest form, a place where moments of profound beauty could turn to brutal reality in a heartbeat. The peaceful tableau was a flimsy veil, hiding the ancient, unending drama of survival. The python was a creature of patience and power, a living, coiled shadow in the thick undergrowth. It had been waiting for hours, its obsidian eyes fixed on a young gazelle that had strayed from its herd. The serpent's muscles were a top promise of a swift, merciless end. But as the lioness settled a few feet from its hiding place, an ancient instinct took over. The gaze shifted. The gazelle was forgotten. A larger, more dangerous quarry had invaded its space. The python, a master of ambush, saw not a king's mate, but a challenge, a threat to be neutralized. With a speed that defied its size, the python launched itself from grass. Its coils, thick and powerful as steel cables, wrapped around the lioness in a vice-like grip. A guttural roar, a sound of agony and shock, tore through the stillness. The male lion erupted, a symphony of rage and desperation. He clawed at the air, pacing frantically around the struggling pair, his roars of anguish a tragic counterpoint to the python's silent, deadly work. The lioness thrashed, her powerful body weakening with every constricted breath. Her golden eyes, once so full of life, began to cloud over. Miles away, Ranger James leaned against his dusty Land Rover, the noonday sun baking his skin. The distant roars were a familiar sound, the daily soundtrack of the savannah. He dismissed them as the usual territorial disputes. But a flicker of unease, a cold premonition, made him pause. He'd seen this landscape turn on its inhabitants before. An image of a young antelope, tangled in a poacher's snare, flashed in his mind, a memory that still haunted his quiet moments. He turned the key, and the engine rumbled to life, an impulse of a gut feeling guiding him toward the source of the sound. The Land Rover cut a path through the tall grass, and the scene that unfolded before him was a visceral punch to the gut. The king of the jungle, once a symbol of unshakable power, was a helpless spectator. The lioness, the very embodiment of grace and strength, was a gasping, dying victim of the earth itself. James slammed on the brakes, the wheels kicking up a cloud of red dust. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, his mind racing. The air crackled with a silent, primal standoff. James knew the risks. One false move, a single misstep, could lead to a lethal strike from the python or a misunderstanding that would provoke the distraught male lion. His training screamed at him to stay in the vehicle, to let nature take its course. But the sight of the lioness's fading struggle was too much to bear. It triggered something deep inside him, a long-buried echo of his own past. He remembered the young antelope, its eyes full of a pleading terror he could do nothing about. He remembered his father's words, a gentle but firm command that had shaped his life. Every life, no matter how small or how great, is worth fighting for. His mind became a battlefield. Do I have the right to interfere with nature? Can I truly save this lion without becoming its next victim? Will I be able to live with myself if I just stand by and watch her die? His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic rhythm that matched the lioness's gasping breaths. The rational part of his brain, the part that had kept him alive for years, told him to stay put. But his soul, a deeper, more compassionate force, told him he had to act. A surge of conviction washed over him. He reached into the back of his Jeep and grabbed a thick wooden stick, the one he used to ward off snakes from camp. It felt thin and insignificant in his hands, a ridiculously small weapon against the power of the wild. But he held it tight, a singular anchor against the rising tide of fear. He looked at the lioness, her eyes now distant, and made his decision. "Not on my watch," he whispered to himself. With the stick in his hand, James moved slowly and deliberately across the open savanna. The crunch of his boots on the dry earth seemed deafening. He fixed his gaze on the python, ignoring the male lion for now. The serpent's coils were a grotesque sculpture of brute force, and its head, a triangle of malice, was poised to strike. James lifted the stick and brought it down on the ground a few feet from the struggling pair. The thwack echoed through the tense silence, and the python's head snapped toward him, its jaws opening in a silent threat. The lioness, sensing a new kind of terror, thrashed harder, and the python's coils tightened mercilessly. James took another step closer, his hands slick with sweat. He aimed the stick at the python's head, trying to distract it, to find a weak point in its iron grip. The snake lunged, its fangs clattering against the wood, the force of the strike nearly yanking the stick from his grasp. Behind him, he heard a low growl. He turned his head just slightly to see the male lion take a deliberate step toward him. For a moment, time seemed to stop. James's heart pounded in his ears, a frantic drumbeat of impending doom. He was caught between two apex predators. One wrong move, one flicker of aggression, and his life would be over. But the lion did not attack. It stopped, its golden eyes fixed on James. It was an impossible moment of understanding. The lion seemed to realize that this human, this strange creature, was not an enemy, but an ally. It was a silent agreement, a fragile alliance forged in the face of death. James turned back to the task at hand, his focus renewed. He leveraged the stick against the python's coils, grunting with effort, trying to pry them loose. The python writhed, a torrent of powerful muscle, but James held firm. He thought of his father's words again. He wasn't just saving a lion. He was restoring a balance, a small but significant act of preservation in a world that so often forgets its value. With a final, desperate shove, he managed to loosen the python's grip. The snake, sensing defeat, uncoiled in a flash and slithered back into the anonymity of the tall grass, a shadow retreating from the light. The lioness lay limp, her chest barely rising, but she was free. James stood for a moment, his body shaking, his mind reeling. He was alive. The midday sun had begun its slow descent, its harsh light giving way to the soft, golden hues of late afternoon. The lion bent his magnificent head, nudging the lioness gently. He licked her face, a tender and protective gesture that spoke of relief and a bond far deeper than any words could convey. James took a step back, his heart still thrumming with adrenaline. He was an outsider in this tender moment, a witness to a private, powerful exchange. As he turned to leave, he felt a gaze on his back. He looked over his shoulder. The male lion was looking directly at him. There was no growl, no roar, just a silent, ancient stare. It wasn't a human thank you. It was something far more profound, a shared moment of quiet understanding that transcended species. It was a recognition, a fragile thread of connection between man and beast that would forever be seared into his memory. James walked back to his Jeep, the setting sun painting the savanna in fiery oranges and deep reds. A profound sense of peace settled over him. He hadn't conquered anything. He hadn't tamed the wild. He had simply acted with compassion, and in doing so, he had become a part of the ecosystem, not an observer, but a guardian. He looked out at the vast expanse of the savanna, the world that had nearly claimed him and that he had helped to save. "We are not masters of this world," he whispered to himself, the words feeling as true as the ground beneath his feet. "We are its caretakers. Every act of kindness, every moment of compassion has the power to change a life." Thank you for watching the emotional journey of Ranger James and the lion he saved. This story poses a challenging question. If you were in James's position, standing on that thin line between life and death, would you have intervened despite the risk to yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales of miracles born from nature and compassion.